How was Carl Schmitt able to rearm so quickly? Like every other country after the last war, Germany faced hard times. But in Germany, careful manipulation made its results much worse for the millions of Carl Schmitts. Inflation made clever financiers rich and canceled the huge debts of the big landowners. It broke Carl Schmitt. Then came the Depression. That cost him his job. So hunger was added to his resentment and bitterness. This was the moment for which the unholy quartet had waited. Now the militarists, the landowners, the state officials, the industrialists emerged from their self-sought obscurity. Their plans were ready. Now they went to work. "What is the cause of your troubles?" shouted Schacht of the Reichsbank. "The Treaty of Versailles." "Who signed the treaty?" asked the reactionary newspapers. "The Democrats." "And why are you starving?" said Krupp, the munitions king. "To pay for reparations." "Who started the war?" said the Crown Prince. "The French." "Who lost the war?" asked Hindenburg. "The Democrats, the Communists, the traitors." And Carl Schmitt listened. He was hearing the story he wanted to hear. He was a victim of a vast conspiracy, he told himself. The world was against him. Once again, he was being taught to hate. Once again, he was thirsting for revenge. And revenge was possible because the world allowed him to tear up the Versailles Treaty, clause by clause. Instead of enforcing it, we Americans refused to sign it and withdrew our army of occupation after only 9 months. The British, even though Germany was consistently violating it, pulled out after 5 years. The French made one final attempt to enforce the treaty and marched into the Ruhr. But this made them so unpopular in a world drenched with heartbreaking German propaganda that they withdrew sullenly behind their Maginot Line. Now, let's see what would have happened had the treaty been enforced. Without a general staff, Germany could not have planned World War II. From a demilitarized Rhineland, she couldn't have attacked France or the Low Countries. Without an air force, she could not have blitzed Britain. With an army of 100,000, she could not have attacked the Soviet Union. Without submarines, she could not have threatened our own Atlantic lifeline. But the Treaty of Versailles was not enforced. And as for the League of Nations, we refused to join it, and other countries paid it little more than lip service. So once again, the Germans began to march. Not in the open at first, but on disguised drill fields, masquerading as patriotic veteran organizations, or as the so-called Technical Auxiliary Corps, ostensibly formed to help in case of strikes, or as Einwohnerwehr, vigilante groups claiming to protect the citizens against communism, or in schools, simply under the name of calisthenics, but always under the supervision of army officers. The old German tradition was on its way back. But to the victorious Allies, the German leaders sang a different tune: peace, friendship, and a piteous cry for help.
Germany's fate is the fate of the world. Germany's distress is the distress of the world. The prosperity of the individual nations is the prosperity of all.
I hope one day to come over to America and visit your beautiful country myself.
The German political and economical situation today is extremely difficult. This is the result not only of having lost the World War, but above all the outcome of the fact that Germany's former enemies are oppressing her above endurance.
And when the German leaders whined they were too poor to pay reparations, we believed them. Result? Not only did they not pay 1 penny, but they received additional billions granted them in loans. It didn't occur to most of us that they would use this money to build up their industry for another war. We began to sympathize with Carl Schmitt. Why should he suffer because his father started a war? Maybe the Versailles Treaty wasn't fair. Maybe the French had been too tough. Or maybe it was the British. Or maybe Wilson wasn't very practical. Once again, we were determined to see only the pleasant side of the German character. this clean and tidy people, this musical people, this industrious people, this historic country, this beautiful country. But behind this peaceful facade, the Germans prepared again for aggression. Germany began to rearm. Its leaders planned the death blow for the German Republic. True, they had already taken it over for their purpose, installing the aged von Hindenburg as president. But it was still in structure a democracy, and that meant liberals and unions and free speech and a free opposition. And the German leaders knew, as Frederick and Bismarck and the Kaiser had known, that you can't start ruthless aggression abroad without ruthless discipline at home. Therefore, the time had come for the Republic to be eliminated. To achieve this, they needed a tool with which to appeal to the Germans' old passion for superiority and conquest. Not a feudal monarch this time like Frederick, nor an aristocratic landowner like Bismarck, nor an emperor like the Kaiser, but an ex-corporal of the German army, with a fanatic gleam in his eye and the power to arouse a mob. Preaching the same old doctrine as his predecessors, the old doctrine that had never failed to arouse the German people. Himself jobless, uneducated, cowardly, resentful, Hitler gathered around him misfits like himself, people obsessed with grievances, real or imaginary, people who weren't as prominent as they thought they should be, people with inferiority complexes who wanted to shout with a crowd, people who wanted power but were too lazy to work for it, sheep anxious to be led, dope addicts, perverts, bullies, cranks. Unfortunately, those Germans who were liberally minded regarded Hitler as either a joke or a nuisance. But the German nationalists well knew his possibilities. They knew that he was capable of administering the death blow to the German Republic, of forging the German people into a single mold. Backed by the militarists, who saw in him their chance to build a mighty war machine,